You awake not to the sound of a war horn, but to the gnawing ache in your stomach and the chill of the morning air on your face. You are not a Viking warrior. You are a farmer. In this world, what is the first, most dangerous challenge of your day? It's not a rival clan. It's simply waking up. We imagine the Viking Age as a time of epic raids and grand feasts. But for the vast majority, life was a far cry from the sagas. It was a daily struggle against cold, hunger, and darkness. Over the next few hours, we'll explore this forgotten reality, the true texture of life for the Norse people. If you appreciate these deep dives into the quiet corners of history, consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories. We'd love to hear your initial thoughts on Viking life in the comments below. Welcome to Sleeping Scribe, where calming history stories help you unwind and gently fall asleep. Tonight in Bedtime History, we journey back 1,000 years. Let the sounds of the modern world fade. Imagine yourself lying not in a comfortable bed, but on a simple wooden bench, the embers of the central fire glowing faintly in the dark. A new day is beginning. The first sensation is the cold. It is a deep, penetrating chill that seems to emanate from the very earth beneath you, seeping through the rough-spun wool of your blanket and the stiff animal hide you lie upon. There is no gentle awakening here. Consciousness returns with a jolt, a physical reminder of the world's harshness. You shift your weight, and the coarse fibers of the sheepskin scratch against your skin, a constant, familiar irritant. This is your bed, a raised wooden platform built along the curving interior wall of the longhouse, shared with the rest of your family. It is simple. It is functional. It is all you have ever known. Your breath plumes in the dim air, a small, fleeting cloud in the vast, smoky dark. Above you, the ceiling is lost in shadow, but you know its shape intimately. You know the way the great wooden beams, blackened by years of soot, hold up the heavy turf roof. There are no windows in this home. Light is a precious commodity, and so is warmth. To cut a window into the wall would be to invite the ferocious Scandinavian winds inside, an enemy you cannot afford to entertain. The only opening to the outside world is the luary, a simple hole in the center of the roof, directly above the long central fire pit. Last night, as the winds howled, it was likely covered with a stretched hide, trapping the smoke inside with you, and so you can taste the air. It is thick and acrid. The ghost of last night's fire lingers, a sharp, resinous tang of pine and peat that coats the back of your throat and makes your eyes water. This is the myth versus the morning. The sagas sing of heroes with sun-bleached hair, standing on the prows of dragon ships, their axes gleaming. They speak of glory, of gold, of distant shores. But they do not speak of this. They do not speak of the grit in your teeth, or the persistent cough that rattles through the chests of the old ones in the darkness. They do not describe the oppressive, communal smell of unwashed bodies, stale sweat, and damp wool, all mingled with the lingering odors of cooked fish and the animals who share this space with you. Privacy is a concept that does not exist here. It is an impossible luxury. You can hear the soft rustle of your kin stirring on their own benches. A child whimpers in its sleep. An old man groans as he sits up, his joints creaking in protest against the cold. Your life is an open book, its pages turned for all to see, its every sound heard by every ear. Your first task is not to gird yourself for battle. It is far more fundamental. You must tend to the fire, the heart of the longhouse, its only source of light and warmth, has dwindled to a bed of glowing embers. It cannot be allowed to die. To let the fire go out is to surrender to the cold and the dark, a failure of the most basic duty. You swing your legs over the side of the bench, your bare feet meeting the cold, packed earth of the floor. You feel your way through the gloom, your hands outstretched, your movements slow and deliberate. Others are stirring now, their shapes moving like ghosts in the faint orange glow of the embers. The sounds multiply. Someone is coughing, a deep, rattling sound that speaks of lungs permanently irritated by smoke. From the far end of the longhouse, partitioned off by a simple wooden wall, you hear the low, mournful lowing of a calf. The animals are waking too. Their survival is tied to yours, their warmth a shared resource in the long, brutal winters. You reach the fire pit, a long, shallow trench of stone and earth running down the center of the hall. You kneel, coaxing the embers back to life. You add small, dry twigs, blowing gently, patiently, until a tiny flame flickers and catches. Then you add larger pieces of wood, carefully stacked. The fire is life. It will cook your meager food, keep the killing cold at bay, and provide the only light by which you will work when the sun is gone. In this world, life is a fragile gift. The bards may not sing of it, but the ever-present threat of death hangs in the air just as surely as the smoke. The average person might hope to see 30 or 40 winters, if they are lucky. So many do not. You have seen babies born blue and still in the dead of winter. You have seen children taken by fevers that sweep through the settlement, and strong men felled by infected wounds that refuse to heal. Life is a constant, wearying struggle. A splash of icy water from a wooden bucket onto your face is the extent of your morning hygiene. You pull on your clothes in the semi-darkness. A simple woolen tunic, the kirtle, dyed a drab brown or gray with plant-based dyes. Woolen trousers, held up with a leather belt. Simple leather shoes stuffed with dried grass for insulation. This is your uniform for the day's labor. It is a profound misunderstanding to think of your people as Vikings. That word, Viking, is not who you are. It is something you do. It refers to an activity, a journey, a raid. It is for the young, the restless, the landless, or the ambitious chieftain looking to increase his wealth and prestige. But for you, and for almost everyone you know, life is not defined by the sea. It is defined by the soil. You are a farmer, a bondi. Your world is a small plot of land, a collection of fields and pastures carved out of the unforgiving northern landscape. Your concerns are not with foreign kings, but with the health of your livestock, the timing of the planting, and the signs that foretell a harsh winter. Time itself is not measured by the rigid hands of a clock. It is measured by the slow, majestic arc of the sun across the sky. The first hint of gray light filtering through the smoke hole is your signal to rise. The position of the sun will tell you when to eat, when to rest, and when the day's work is done. Your life is governed by seasons, not seconds. And now, as the fire grows stronger, pushing back the shadows, the first day of your life, governed by this new sun, has truly begun. From the intimacy of your sleeping bench, your perspective now widens, taking in the entire structure that is your world. This longhouse, this langus, is your shelter, your workshop, your barn, and your social hall. It is both a sanctuary and a cage. From the outside, it seems almost a part of the landscape itself. A long, low mound of earth, its gently curving walls blending into the surrounding fields. The walls are not solid planks of wood, a resource too valuable for such things. They are a clever construction of wattle and daub. A lattice of flexible hazel or willow branches is woven between sturdy upright timber posts, and this framework is then plastered with a thick mixture of clay, soil, animal dung, and straw. It is a surprisingly effective barrier against the wind, but it is in constant need of maintenance. It cracks in the summer heat and can be softened by the relentless autumn rains. The roof above you is a living thing. Layers of birch bark are laid over the wooden rafters to create a waterproof membrane, and on top of this, thick slabs of turf are placed grass side up. In the summer, it might even spout wildflowers, a deceptive touch of beauty on a deeply functional structure. But this green blanket is heavy, especially when sodden with rain or snow, putting immense strain on the timber frame below. And it is never perfectly waterproof. The sound of dripping water after a storm is a common nighttime rhythm, a steady plink, plink, plink into a strategically placed wooden bucket on the floor. The floor itself is simply the earth. Packed down by generations of footsteps, it is hard and uneven. In the dry months, it is a source of constant dust that rises in clouds with every movement. In the wet seasons, it can turn to a slick, cold mud near the doorways, clinging to your shoes and the hems of your clothes. There is a sense of being perpetually earthbound, connected to the soil in the most literal way. This single, cavernous room, perhaps 50 or 60 feet long, is home to your entire extended family. 20, 30, sometimes even 50 souls living side by side. Grandparents, parents, children, cousins, and perhaps a handful of thralls, all sharing the same air, the same fire, the same life. At one end of the structure, often separated by just a low partition, is the byre. This is where the most valuable livestock, the family's milk cow, a few goats, perhaps an ox, are sheltered during the winter. Their presence is a mixed blessing. The smell is immense and unavoidable, a sharp, pungent aroma of manure and damp animal fur that permeates everything. The mess they create must be mucked out regularly, a heavy, thankless task. But their contribution is vital. In the depths of winter, the collective body heat of these animals helps to warm the entire longhouse. A living furnace that can mean the difference between survival and freezing. The interior is profoundly dark. Even at midday, the light that filters down from the smoke hole is weak and diffuse, swallowed by the soot-blackened timbers and the dark earthen floor. The world inside is one of shades and shadows, where faces are illuminated only by the flickering, unreliable light of the central fire. This fire, the langled, is the true heart of the home. It is where the food is cooked, where stories are told, where tools are mended. Near its center sits the high seat, a more ornate bench that is the place of honor for the head of the household. It is from this seat that he dispenses judgments, welcomes guests, and presides over the life of his family. The warmth from this fire is a comfort, but a deceptive one. You can sit close, feeling its heat on your face and hands, while your back, turned to the dark corners of the hall, remains chilled to the bone. Furnishings are almost non-existent by modern standards. There are the sleeping benches that line the walls, which also serve as seating during the day. There are large wooden chests for storing precious textiles, tools, or dried foods. Perhaps a single rough-hewn table stands near the fire. In one corner, a woman might sit at a large, upright loom, the rhythmic clack of its wooden parts a constant backdrop to the sounds of the house. Tools that are not in use, along with shields and weapons, are not locked away. They hang from pegs on the walls or from the rafters themselves, always within reach. An axe, a spear, a bow. They are as much a part of the domestic landscape as a cooking pot or a weaving shuttle. This environment takes a toll on the body. The constant smoke, trapped within the low ceiling space, is a slow poison. It irritates the eyes, leaving them perpetually red and watery. It blackens the lungs, leading to the chronic, hacking coughs you hear every morning. Archaeological evidence from skeletons of this period often shows signs of respiratory disease, a direct consequence of a life lived in smoke. This longhouse, your only refuge from the wild world outside, is a dark, claustrophobic, and unhealthy place. It is a necessary shelter, but it offers its protection at a high price. With the world slowly taking shape in the growing light of the fire, the gnawing ache in your stomach returns, demanding attention. It is time for the first meal of the day. But you must banish any thought of grand feasts, of tables groaning under the weight of roasted boar and overflowing drinking horns. That is the stuff of a Jarl's celebration, a rare and momentous occasion. For you, the reality of food is far more monotonous, far more pragmatic. Your meal will almost certainly come from the large iron cauldron that hangs on a chain over the central fire. Inside this pot is the grouter. It is a kind of perpetual stew or porridge, the foundation of your diet. It is never emptied, only replenished. Yesterday's leftovers form the base for today's meal. The primary ingredient is grain, barley, and sometimes oats, coarsely ground and boiled in water or milk until it forms a thick, lumpy gruel. Into this base, other ingredients are added as they become available. Today, it might be a handful of dried beans or peas, which have been soaking overnight to soften them. Perhaps a few chopped root vegetables from the winter stores. A turnip, maybe a carrot, though it would be the pale, wild variety, not the bright orange kind of the future. The taste is bland, earthy. It is sustenance, not pleasure. Its purpose is to fill your belly and provide the energy for the hard labor to come. Meat is a treasure. The livestock you so carefully shelter are far too valuable for their meat to be eaten casually. A cow provides milk for years, which can be turned into butter and cheese. An ox provides the raw power needed to plow the fields. To slaughter such an animal is a major decision, usually reserved for a significant religious festival or a wedding. More often, any meat that finds its way into the pot is from an older animal, past its useful prime, its flesh tough and stringy. Or perhaps it is a small portion of salted pork or a bit of mutton. But on most days, there is no meat at all. Your most reliable source of protein comes from the sea or the rivers. Fish, especially cod, is a cornerstone of the Norse diet. It is caught in great numbers during the summer months and then preserved for the winter. Some of it is dried until it becomes as hard as a piece of wood. Other portions are heavily salted. A chunk of this dried, salted cod might be broken off and tossed into the grouter, where it will slowly soften, infusing the whole pot with its strong, salty flavor and pungent smell. To accompany the porridge, there might be bread. But this is not a light, airy loaf. It is a simple flatbread, dense and heavy, made from barley or rye flour ground with a stone quorum. The grinding process often leaves tiny flecks of stone in the flour, and the resulting bread is gritty, wearing down the teeth over a lifetime. You dip a piece of this tough bread into the porridge, using it to scoop the warm mixture into your mouth. The sound of your wooden spoon scraping against the bottom of your wooden bowl is a simple, universal sound of this morning ritual. Dairy is also central to your diet. The milk from your cow and goats is a precious resource. Some is drunk fresh, but most is quickly processed to preserve it. You churn butter, and you make simple, hard cheeses that can be stored. Much of it is fermented into a sour, thick, yogurt-like substance called skyr. Its tangy taste is a sharp contrast to the blandness of the porridge. The concept of 3 fixed meals a day does not govern your life. You eat when the work allows and when food is ready. This morning meal, the dagmal, is meant to fuel the morning's work. Another meal, the natmal, will be eaten in the evening when the light has failed. People eat when they are hungry and when food is available. The only sweetener you know is honey, a rare and valuable commodity harvested from wild bee colonies or from carefully tended hives. It is used sparingly, a special treat to sweeten a drink or a small portion of porridge. To drink, you might have water from a nearby well or stream, but this can be risky. More often, you drink a weak, low-alcohol ale brewed from barley. The brewing process kills most of the harmful bacteria, making it a safer option than potentially contaminated water. This simple, cloudy ale is a part of daily life for everyone, even the children. Behind every meal is a constant, quiet fear. It is the fear of the harvest failing, of the fishing boats returning empty, of the winter stores running out before the spring thaw arrives. It is the fear of starvation, a concept so real and so dreaded that you have a specific word for it: svelta. Every act of food preservation, salting fish, drying meat, storing grains, foraging for berries and nuts in the autumn, is a battle waged against the looming threat of svelta. This morning porridge, however bland and monotonous, is a victory. It is a sign that you have survived another night and that you have the strength to face another day. Having met the basic needs of shelter and a meager breakfast, your mind now turns to your place in this world. Who are you, and what is expected of you? Society is not a collection of equals. It is a clearly defined hierarchy, a great ladder upon which every person has their rung. At the very top are the jarls. They are the chieftains, the aristocracy. They are the wealthy landowners, the successful raid leaders, the dispensers of justice and patronage. They live in the largest longhouses, feast on roasted meats, and wear fine clothes dyed in bright colors, adorned with silver and gold. Their power is absolute, their authority derived from wealth, lineage, and the strength of their arms. At the very bottom are the thralls. They are slaves. They are not considered people, but property, no different from a cow or a chest of tools. A thrall might be a captive taken in a raid on a foreign shore, a criminal paying their debt to society, or simply someone born to a thrall mother. They have no rights, no property, no legal standing. They perform the hardest, dirtiest labor and can be bought, sold, or even killed by their master with no legal consequence. Theirs is a life of utter subjugation. At the very bottom are the thralls. They are slaves. They are not considered people, but property, no different from a cow or a chest of tools. A thrall might be a captive taken in a raid on a foreign shore, a criminal paying their debt to society, or simply someone born to a thrall mother. They have no rights, no property, no legal standing. They perform the hardest, dirtiest labor and can be bought, sold, or even killed by their master with no legal consequence. Theirs is a life of utter subjugation. This freedom is not a license to do as you please. It is a heavy cloak of obligation. As a free man, you are required to attend the local assembly, the Thing. This is where laws are recited, disputes are settled, and the important decisions of the community are made. At the Thing, your voice can be heard, your opinion weighed. It is a tense and serious affair, a gathering of armed men where honor is paramount. A careless word here could lead to a deadly feud. You are not an individual, but part of a larger whole, your kin, your family. This bond is the most powerful force in your society. Your honor is your family's honor. An insult directed at you is an insult to your father, your brothers, your cousins. Such slights cannot be ignored and often lead to violent retribution, the beginning of a blood feud that can consume families for generations. Conversely, if you commit a crime, your entire family is responsible for paying the fine. You are bound by this intricate web of kinship for both protection and peril. Your freedom also means you owe loyalty to a jarl. He is your chieftain, your leader in war. When he sounds the horn to call the levy, the leywangre, you are obligated to answer. You must leave your farm, take up your axe and shield, and join his war band, whether it is to defend your own lands from attack or to journey across the sea on a raid. This service is a tax, paid not in coin, but in time, risk, and potentially blood. Your life is not entirely your own. It is dictated by the turning of the seasons, the needs of your farm, the demands of your family, and the call of your chieftain. There is precious little room for personal autonomy. Your status as a carl, while precious, is not secure. A few bad harvests could plunge you into debt. A failed trading venture could ruin you. If you cannot pay what you owe, you could be forced to sell your land, and ultimately, even yourself or your children. The line between a free carl and a debt thrall is terrifyingly thin. It is a precipice you must constantly work to avoid. In this world of obligation and precariousness, your word is everything. There are no written contracts. A bargain is sealed with a handshake and a spoken oath. Your reputation, your honor, is your most valuable currency. To be known as an oath-breaker is to be cast out, untrusted, and alone. Hospitality is also a sacred duty. When a traveler comes to your door, you are obligated to offer them food and shelter. This is not just kindness. It is a strategic necessity. A guest you treat well today may become a powerful ally tomorrow. The firm grip of a handshake that seals a deal, the respectful but watchful gaze of your neighbors as you pass their farms, the weight of the axe at your side, these are the sensory realities of your social standing. It is a world of serious, pragmatic responsibilities, where freedom and burden are two sides of the same coin. The first part of the day is now over. The fire is crackling, the meager breakfast is eaten, and your place within the complex machinery of your world is clear. The sun is now fully risen, its weak light finally beginning to pierce the gloom of the longhouse. The real work is about to begin. As the day's labor looms, take a moment. What aspect of this morning routine surprises you the most? Share your thoughts gently in the comments if you're still with us. The sun has climbed higher now, a pale disk in the vast northern sky. The day's labor has begun in earnest, pulling you from the smoky confines of the longhouse into the crisp open air. This is where your life is truly forged. Not on the battlefield, but here in the endless struggle with the earth. The very heart of your existence, the central task that dictates everything, is farming, and it begins with a fight against the land itself. Your primary tool is the ard plow. It is a simple ancient implement, little more than a wooden frame with a sharpened tip, perhaps sheathed in iron if you are fortunate. It has no mold board, no sophisticated curve to lift and turn the soil. It is a scratch plow. It gouges a shallow furrow in the ground, pushing the earth to either side. You stand behind it, your hands gripping the rough wooden handles, your knuckles white. In front of you, a pair of oxen, your most prized possessions, strain against their wooden yoke. They are your partners in this toil, their broad shoulders and immense, patient strength, the engine of this entire operation. You guide the ard with your own body, leaning your weight into it, keeping the tip buried in the earth. The work is jarring, unforgiving. The thin Scandinavian soil is not the deep, rich loam of other lands. It is a stubborn adversary, riddled with stones and the gnarled roots of ancient trees. Every few steps, the ard's tip strikes a hidden rock with a bone-jarring thud that travels up the wooden frame and into your arms and shoulders. The oxen grunt and stop. You must then wrestle the plow back, heave the stone from the earth with your bare hands, and toss it onto the growing pile at the edge of the field, a pile that represents generations of this same back-breaking work. Because the ard only scratches the surface, you cannot simply plow in neat, parallel lines. You must cross-plow, working the entire field a second time at a right angle to the first pass, creating a checkerboard pattern of shallow furrows. This is the only way to prepare a seedbed thorough enough to give your crops a chance at life. The smell of the damp, turned earth fills the air, a scent of hope and exhaustion. It mingles with the sharp, grassy scent of the oxen's sweat and your own. Into these carefully prepared furrows, the seeds are sown. This, too, is done by hand. A leather bag of seed is slung over your shoulder, and you walk the furrows, broadcasting the grain with a flick of your wrist, a practiced, rhythmic motion that must be perfectly even. Too much seed in one place, and the plants will choke each other out. Too little, and the yield will be dangerously sparse. You sow the crops that can withstand the cool climate and the short growing season. Barley is the king of grains here, tough and reliable. You also plant oats and rye, and fields of legumes like peas and beans that help to return some life to the overworked soil. This soil is hungry. The manure from the animals you sheltered all winter, the very material you cursed while mucking out the byre, is now a precious vital fertilizer. It is spread across the fields with care, a dark offering to the earth in exchange for the life it will hopefully provide. Once the seeds are in the ground, the work does not stop. A new battle begins, the battle against weeds. Throughout the long sunlit days of summer, you and your children will spend endless hours bent over in the fields, pulling up the persistent weeds that threaten to steal sunlight and water from your precious crops. It is monotonous, aching work. And then there is the hay. While the grain crops grow, you must also think of the winter. Your livestock cannot survive without fodder. Vast meadows must be cut by hand with long-handled scythes, the grass left to dry in the sun, then raked and gathered and stored in huge stacks. This haymaking is a frantic, communal effort, a race to get the hay in before the summer rains can spoil it. Finally, in the autumn, comes the harvest. It is a time of both relief and incredible pressure. The entire family works from dawn until dusk, moving through the fields with small, curved iron sickles. You grasp a handful of grain stalks and slice through them with a swift, rhythmic cut. The sound of a dozen sickles slicing through the dry stalks creates a soft, whispering chorus across the landscape. The work is fast, but it is also painful. Your back aches from being bent over all day. Blisters rise on your hands from the sickle's handle. The dry chaff and dust get into your eyes, your throat, your clothes. You work with a desperate urgency, because the weather can turn at any moment. An early frost, a week of cold rain, and an entire year's work could be ruined. The failure of a single harvest is not an inconvenience. It does not mean a lean year. It means starvation. It means watching your children grow thin and weak during the long, dark winter. It means svelte. This is the anxiety that underlies every swing of the sickle, every seed cast upon the ground. Your farm is a small one, focused entirely on subsistence. You are not growing for profit. You are growing to live. And in this landscape of dramatic fjords, towering mountains, and deep forests, the amount of land suitable for farming is scarce and precious. Every square foot must be made to yield its utmost, or the consequences will be dire. While the men and older boys are in the fields, fighting their battle with the soil, the farmstead is anything but quiet. It is a bustling hive of activity, a different domain of labor that is just as vital, just as relentless. This is the woman's world, and she is not a passive observer in the fight for survival. She is its general. She is the Husfreyja, the mistress of the house, and her authority is absolute. Her status is displayed for all to see, not through a weapon, but through the set of keys that hangs from her belt. These are the keys to the wooden chests that hold the farm's food stores, its preserved meats, its dried grains, its precious bolts of cloth. She holds the power of sustenance, the responsibility for rationing the fruits of the harvest to ensure the family survives the winter. She is the quartermaster of this small army. Her work is endless and varied. While the men produce the raw materials, she transforms them into life itself. All food preparation falls to her and the other women of the household. She is a master of preservation, using ancient techniques to stretch the bounty of summer and autumn across the barren months of winter. She salts fish and meat, packing them in barrels of precious salt to ward off rot. She hangs strips of meat and fish high in the smoky rafters of the longhouse, slowly drying them until they are hard and preserved. She uses the power of fermentation, pickling cabbages and other vegetables in brine, and turning milk into the sour, long-lasting skyr. She oversees the grinding of the grain into flour, the baking of the dense flatbreads, and the constant tending of the simmering grouter in the central cauldron. Near the long house, she tends her kitchen garden, the kalgar. Here she grows the herbs needed for medicine and for flavoring the monotonous diet. She cultivates hardy greens like kale and cabbage, plants that can withstand the northern climate. She forages in the woods for berries, nuts, and mushrooms, adding crucial vitamins and variety to the family's meals. She is also the one who turns the rivers of milk from the cows and goats into butter and cheese, two more staples that must be carefully prepared and stored. The warmth and hissing of milk being heated over the fire, the rhythmic plunge of the churn, these are the sounds of her domain. Yet perhaps her most time-consuming and economically vital task is the production of textiles. Clothing is not bought. It is made, from start to finish, in a process that takes up a significant portion of every woman's year. It begins with the shearing of the sheep in the spring. The raw wool is greasy, full of dirt and lanolin. It must be painstakingly cleaned and carded, combing the fibers until they are all aligned. Then comes the spinning. For hours upon hours, every day, a woman will sit with a drop spindle. It is a simple tool, a weighted stick, but in her skilled hands, it whirls and dances, magically drawing the fluffy wool into a strong, continuous thread. The soft, whirring sound of the spindle is one of the most constant and gentle sounds within the longhouse. Once enough thread has been spun, a monumental task in itself. It is dyed using colors coaxed from plants, roots, and lichens. Then it is brought to the loom. The Viking loom is a great, upright, warp-weighted structure. The vertical threads, the warp, are not held taut by a roller, but by a row of heavy stones hanging at the bottom. Weaving on such a loom is physically demanding work. The weaver stands for hours, passing the shuttle with the weft thread back and forth, and beating the thread upwards into a tight, dense cloth with a wooden sword or a comb made of bone. The rhythmic clack-clack of the weaving weights hitting each other is the sound of industry, the sound of warmth being created from scratch. From this cloth, she will sew every tunic, every pair of trousers, every cloak for her entire family. And her weaving creates more than just clothing. It creates one of the most critical pieces of technology in the Viking world, the sail. A single sail for a longship requires a staggering amount of wool and labor. It could take 2 women a full 2 years to spin the thread and weave the cloth needed for just one sail. This was women's work, and it was the work that powered the Viking Age. Without these sails, there are no long-distance voyages, no trade, no raids. The Husfreyja is also the primary caregiver, tending to sick children and aging parents. When the men of the farm are away, whether for a week of trading, a month of fishing, or an entire summer of raiding, she takes complete control. She manages the thralls, directs the farm work, and defends the homestead. She is far from powerless. In fact, Norse women enjoyed legal rights that were remarkable for the time. They could inherit property, run a business, and even initiate a divorce if they were mistreated. In a world that could be brutally patriarchal, the Norse woman held a position of respect and quiet, industrious power. Her hands may not wield the axe that fells a tree, but they wield the keys, the spindle, and the loom, the very tools that ensure the family's survival. Beyond the fields and the homestead, there is another center of activity, a place of fire, noise, and a kind of primal magic. This is the domain of the craftsman, and most vital of all is the blacksmith. In a society built of wood and iron, the smith is a figure of immense importance and respect. His work is not something everyone can do. It requires immense skill, strength, and a deep, intuitive understanding of his materials. He is seen as a master of secrets, able to command the elements of fire and earth to create things of strength and beauty. His workshop, the smiaja, is often a small, separate hut, set a little apart from the main longhouse to reduce the risk of fire. Inside, the air is thick with heat, and the sharp, metallic smell of burning charcoal and hot iron. The centerpiece is the forge, a hearth of stone and clay where a charcoal fire is brought to a ferocious temperature. This heat is not passive. It is fed by a pair of large, hand-operated bellows, often worked by an apprentice. The rhythmic whoosh-thump of the bellows is the sound of the forge's breathing, pumping life into the fire. The smith's work provides the essential hardware of life. He is the one who forges the iron tip for the ard plow, the blade for the sickle, and the axe head used for clearing forests. He hammers out the hundreds of iron nails and rivets that are the skeleton of a longship, each one a small but critical piece of a much larger whole. He creates the tools for other craftsmen, the chisels for the woodcarver, the knives for the leather worker. For the home, he makes cooking pots, knives for the kitchen, and the chains that hold the cauldron over the fire. And of course, he forges the weapons that define a Jarl's freedom and a Jarl's power. The simple utilitarian spear, point the deadly head of a bearded axe, and for the wealthy, the magnificent pattern-welded sword. This was a sophisticated technique, where rods of iron with different properties were twisted and forged together, creating a blade that was both incredibly strong and flexible, with a beautiful, watery pattern on its surface. The raw material for his work, iron, is not easily obtained. It must be won from the earth in a difficult and smoky process. The smith or his helpers must seek out bog iron, a rusty sedimentary deposit found in peat bogs. These orange chunks of earth are then smelted in a simple clay furnace, a process that takes many hours, and a huge amount of charcoal to separate the small bloom of usable iron from the waste rock, or slag. The heart of the smithy is the anvil, and its sound is the pulse of the community. The rhythmic ringing clang of the hammer, striking hot metal, is a sound of creation, of purpose. You can feel the concussive force of the hammer blows through the very ground beneath your feet. The smith pulls a piece of iron from the forge with his long tongs. It glows with an almost liquid, orange-white light, showering the dark smithy with a cascade of brilliant sparks. He works quickly, his arm a blur of controlled power, turning and shaping the soft, pliable metal with sure, practiced blows. Then, at the perfect moment, he plunges the shaped iron into a trough of water. It explodes with a violent hiss, a cloud of steam erupting into the hot air as the metal is quenched and hardened. The danger is constant. A stray spark can cause a terrible burn. A flying splinter of hot metal can blind a man. The smoke and fumes are a constant assault on the lungs. And the smith is not the only craftsman. Woodworking is just as essential. Skilled carvers create everything from simple wooden bowls and spoons to chests and benches. They adorn the high seats of chieftains and the prows of ships with intricate, swirling carvings of beasts and knots. The shipbuilder, the skippersmyer, is a master craftsman of the highest order, using the clinker-built technique of overlapping planks, fastened with the smith's iron rivets to create the strong, flexible hulls of the iconic longships. Other craftsmen work with bone and antler, carving them into everyday objects like combs, needles, and the pieces for strategy games like Nefertov. While most farmers possess basic skills to repair a handle or patch a wall, the specialists, the smith, the carver, the shipwright, are the indispensable pillars of the community, their skilled hands transforming raw nature into the very fabric of civilization. All of this work, the plowing in the field, the weaving at the loom, the hammering in the forge, is not a series of random tasks. It is a tightly choreographed dance, dictated by a single, unyielding conductor, the rhythm of the seasons. Your life is a cycle, an endless wheel of distinct labors and moods, each tied to the changing light and the temper of the sky. The year does not begin in the dead of winter, but with the first signs of rebirth. Spring is a time of desperate hope and frantic activity. The snow finally melts, the sea ice breaks up, and the sun feels warm on your skin for the first time in months. There is a palpable sense of relief, but no time for rest. This is the time of the hunger gap, when the winter stores are at their lowest, and the new life of the year has not yet begun to yield. You are at your weakest, yet you must work your hardest. The fields must be plowed and sown. Fences must be mended. Ships that have been sheltered on land all winter must be retarred and made seaworthy. The taste of the first fresh, bitter greens foraged from the edge of the forest is a taste of salvation. Then comes summer, the season of endless light. In the far north, the sun barely dips below the horizon. These long days are not for leisure. They are for work. The fields require constant weeding. The hay must be cut and gathered. This is also the season for travel. The seas are calmest. The routes are open. It is the time for trading voyages, for fishing expeditions far from shore, and for the activity that would define your people to the outside world, the Viking. Raiding was a seasonal occupation, a way for young men to gain wealth and prestige, fitting neatly into the agricultural calendar between the spring sowing and the autumn harvest. It was a part of the rhythm, not the whole song. Autumn arrives with a chill in the air and a change in the color of the light. It is the season of the harvest, the most critical and anxious time of the year. It is a frantic race against the coming winter to bring in all the grain, to gather the vegetables from the garden, and to collect the last of the autumn berries. It is also the time of the slaughter. You cannot afford to feed all of your livestock through the winter. Excess animals are butchered, their meat preserved. The sight of the slaughter, with blood steaming in the crisp autumn air, is a grim but necessary part of the cycle. And then winter descends. It is the long darkness. The sun is a fleeting visitor, skimming the southern horizon for just a few hours a day. The world is covered in a deep blanket of snow, its profound silence broken only by the howling of the wind during a storm. This is a time of confinement. The family is trapped together within the smoky longhouse for months on end. Outdoor work ceases. Life moves inward. Winter is for mending tools, for sharpening blades, for spinning and weaving. It is a time for storytelling, for reciting the great epic poems of gods, and heroes, for reinforcing the bonds of kinship that are so essential to surviving the psychological strain of the darkness and the cold. Survival now depends entirely on what was gathered and preserved in the autumn. The fear of running out of firewood, or of seeing the bottom of the grain chest before the spring thaw, is a constant gnawing presence. Great festivals, like Yule at the winter solstice, are held to break the monotony, to feast and drink and remind yourselves that the sun will eventually return. This annual journey through the seasons is the true shape of your life, a relentless cycle of intense work, anxious hope, and dark confinement, repeated year after year as the great wheel turns. The Norse year was a wheel of relentless labor. If you're still awake, we wonder, which season do you think you would find the most challenging? Let us know quietly in the comments. You have tamed the land for now. You have worked the loom and the forge. You have followed the relentless rhythm of the seasons, your body aching with the honest pain of labor. But your world is filled with other threats. They are threats you cannot fight with an axe or shield. They are the invisible enemies that creep into the longhouse in the dead of night, carried on the air itself. They are sickness, injury, and the terrifying whims of the supernatural world. And in this realm of unseen dangers, you are almost entirely powerless. The greatest, most persistent enemy is disease. In your world, there is no understanding of germs, no concept of microscopic organisms that cause illness. Sickness is a mystery, a malevolent force with a will of its own. Its presence is constant and terrifying. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the lives of your children. To bring a child into the world is an act of profound hope, but it is a hope perpetually shadowed by loss. so many do not survive. Perhaps half of all children born in your community will die before they reach their 10th year. Some are lost in the perilous moments of birth, an event that is as dangerous for the mother as it is for the child. Others are taken by fevers that burn through their small bodies, by coughs that rack their chests, or by wasting sicknesses of the gut that leave them pale and weak. This loss is a deep and private sorrow, but it is also a common, expected part of life. Every family knows this pain. The very environment of your home, the longhouse that shelters you, is also a source of illness. You live in close, constant proximity to your animals. Their waste, and your own, creates conditions where parasites flourish. Nearly everyone suffers from intestinal worms, a persistent, draining affliction. Outbreaks of dysentery can sweep through a settlement, a deadly plague of the bowels for which there is no cure. The smoke from the central fire, which you huddle around for warmth, is a slow poison. It fills your lungs day after day, year after year, leading to the chronic, hacking coughs that echo in the smoky air. It is the sound of a people slowly suffocating in their own shelter. Even your food presents a danger. While your diet is low in the sugars that rot teeth in the modern world, it is incredibly coarse. The stone-ground flour in your bread is full of grit, and the tough, preserved foods you eat in the winter require powerful chewing. Over a lifetime, this wears your teeth down to smooth, flat nubs. This severe attrition can expose the sensitive pulp, leading to agonizingly painful abscesses. A swollen jaw and an unending toothache are common complaints among the old. And then there are the injuries. A simple slip of an axe while chopping wood, a deep splinter from a fence post, a cut from a sickle during the harvest, these are not minor inconveniences. They are potential death sentences. Without any effective way to clean a deep wound, infection is an almost certain outcome. You watch in terror as a small cut becomes red and swollen, the skin growing hot to the touch. You see the dark lines creep up a limb, a sign that the poison is spreading. You feel the onset of a raging fever, the violent chills and drenching sweats. As the body fights a battle it will likely lose. The smell of sickness, of a festering wound, can fill the confined space of the longhouse, a constant grim reminder of a loved one's decline. A person suffering from deep depression or psychosis is not understood to have a sickness of the mind, but to be afflicted by spirits, their soul stolen or overshadowed. During the long winters, when the stores of preserved food run low, another unseen enemy emerges: scurvy. Without fresh fruits or vegetables, the body weakens, the gums bleed, and old wounds reopen. It is a slow, painful decay from within. In the face of this constant, multifaceted, and invisible assault, a profound sense of precariousness defines your entire existence. Life is a flickering flame, and the slightest breeze of sickness or injury can extinguish it forever. In this terrifying landscape of inexplicable sickness, you are not entirely without defense. You do not simply surrender to fate. You fight back with the knowledge you have, a potent and mysterious blend of practical herbalism, ancient folk wisdom, and sacred ritual. When illness strikes, you turn to the healers. These are often wise women, the Lickneer, who have inherited a deep and intimate knowledge of the land and the plants that grow upon it. Their medicine bag, a leather satchel filled with dried leaves, roots, and flowers, exudes a strong, pungent aroma of the earth. Each plant has its purpose, its own spirit, its own power. For a bleeding wound, the healer might turn to yarrow, a common wildflower known to many as woundwort. She would chew the leaves into a paste or use a bundle of the dried plant to pack the injury, its properties helping to staunch the flow of blood. For pain and fever, she would know to use the bark of the willow tree. Chewing on it or brewing it into a bitter tea releases a substance that eases pain, a natural remedy that the future will recognize as a form of aspirin. The knowledge is practical, passed down through generations of careful observation. But this practical knowledge is seamlessly interwoven with the magical and the ritualistic. A treatment is never just a physical application. It is a ceremony. As the healer applies a sticky, thick poultice to a swollen joint, she will chant. A low, rhythmic intonation, a gauger, is sung over the patient, a magical song meant to weave a web of healing power to drive out the spirits of sickness. The words are as important as the herbs. They are the active ingredient for the soul, just as the plants are for the body. The Norse possessed surprising skill in some areas of physical medicine. They were adept at setting broken bones, carefully aligning the fractured ends, and binding the limb with rigid splints of wood and tight linen bandages to hold it immobile while it healed. Archaeological finds, skulls bearing the marks of old, healed wounds, suggest they even practiced a form of basic surgery. Trepanation, the drilling of a hole in the skull, may have been used to relieve pressure on the brain after a head injury. It was a desperate and dangerous procedure, but the evidence of bone regrowth around some of these holes proves that some patients actually survived. To stop catastrophic bleeding from a battle wound, they would use the brutal but effective method of cauterization, searing the flesh with a red-hot piece of iron to seal the blood vessels. They even had a glimmer of understanding about cleanliness. Some of the sagas, the great epic stories, describe heroes instructing their attendants to boil water before using it to wash out a wound. This practical step, which would kill the invisible agents of infection, was likely seen as a form of ritual purification, but its practical benefits were real. Diagnosis, too, was a mix of the practical and the magical. It was believed that a deep wound to the stomach could be assessed by feeding the patient a strong-smelling broth of onions and herbs. If the smell of onion later seeped out of the wound itself, it was taken as a fatal sign that the stomach wall had been pierced. And finally, there is the power of faith, embodied in a simple amulet. Many people, perhaps you yourself, wear a small, cast bronze hammer on a thong around your neck. It is the hammer of Thor, a symbol of protection, strength, and order against the forces of chaos. You might hold this small, cool piece of metal tight in your hand when you feel fear or pain, its familiar texture a comfort. It is a piece of preventative medicine, a charm to ward off not just sickness and injury, but all forms of misfortune. Leechcraft may be used to draw out bad blood, and intricate charms carved in runes might be placed under a sick person's bed. This is Viking medicine. It is not a science, but a holistic art, where the body and the soul are treated as one, and every tool from the forest and from the world of spirits is brought to bear in the desperate, hopeful fight for life. When the herbs and the chants fail, when a sickness seems to resist all forms of medicine, the cause is deemed to be on a higher plane. The problem is not with the body, but with your relationship to the vast, unseen world of spirits and gods that surrounds you. Your daily religious life is not one of quiet contemplation in grand temples. It is a constant, pragmatic negotiation with a world that is intensely alive and filled with powerful, non-human beings. Your belief is fundamentally animistic. You know that spirits, vidir, inhabit the world around you. There is a spirit in the great, ancient rock that sits at the edge of your field. There is a spirit in the river that waters your crops. There is a spirit in the ancient grove of trees on the hill. These are the land spirits, the true ancient owners of the place you call home. To have a good harvest, to have your cow birth a healthy calf, to travel safely down the river, you must have a good relationship with them. This relationship is maintained through offerings, a blot. This is not always a grand, bloody sacrifice. More often, it is a small personal gesture of respect. You might pour a splash of fresh milk or good ale onto the earth near the great stone, a gift for the spirit that dwells within. You are not praying for salvation. You are making a trade. You are showing respect in the hope of receiving good fortune in return. This same pragmatic attitude applies to the great gods of Asgard. They are not distant, benevolent beings who love you unconditionally. They are powerful, larger-than-life figures, driven by their own desires and rivalries. They are capricious. They must be treated with respect, and their favor must be earned. For a common farmer like you, the most important god is likely Thor. He is the defender of humanity. His great hammer will near, smashing the giants of chaos who threaten your world. When a thunderstorm cracks across the sky, you do not see a meteorological event. You see and hear Thor riding his goat-drawn chariot, doing battle on your behalf. You ask him for protection, for strength, and for the rains that your crops need. For the fertility of your fields and your family, you turn to Freyr and his sister Freya. They are the gods of life, of harvests, of love, and of sensual pleasure. Small, carved wooden figures of these gods might be kept in a special place in your home, a focus for your hopes for a prosperous future. The spirits of your own ancestors are just as important. The great burial mounds that dot the landscape are not just graves. They are the homes of the dead. Your grandparents and their grandparents are still here, watching over the family, offering wisdom and protection. You might go to their mound to speak to them, to ask for advice, to share news. It is a place of reverent silence, a tangible link between your world and the world of the spirits. Underpinning all of this is the powerful concept of fate, or often translated as word. You believe that the course of every life is a thread, spun and measured by three cosmic women, known as the Norns, at the base of the world tree. While you can act with courage, skill, and honor, the ultimate length and shape of your thread is already determined. This does not lead to passivity, but to a kind of stoic courage. If your death is already fated, why not face life's challenges with boldness? Dreams are not idle fantasies. They are taken with utmost seriousness, seen as omens or direct messages from the gods or the dead. And magic, known as seer, is a very real force. It is a difficult and sometimes dangerous art, often practiced by women, the vulva, who can enter a trance state to see into the future, and sometimes to influence the threads of fate. Your entire world, from the smallest rock to the grandest storm, is infused with supernatural meaning. It is a world you must constantly navigate with offerings, respect, and a healthy dose of fear. The Norse world had its ways of dealing with the unseen forces of the cosmos, but it also required a robust system for dealing with the much more immediate threat of conflict between neighbors. In a society of armed farmers, where honor is paramount, a simple dispute over a stolen pig or a careless insult could easily erupt into deadly violence. Order was maintained not by a king's police force, but by a communal system of law, centered on the local assembly known as the Thing. The Thing is not a building. It is an event. It is an open-air assembly of all the free men of your district, held at a traditional sacred site, perhaps on a large, flat field or a prominent hill marked by a great stone, the Law Rock. Here, under the open sky, the community comes together to settle its disputes. The atmosphere is tense, serious. Everyone in attendance is armed. It is a gathering of peers, and your weapons are a sign of your status as a free man, entitled to speak and be heard. There are no books of law. The laws are a complex set of traditions and precedents, held in the memory of one highly respected individual, the law speaker. It is his duty to stand upon the law rock and recite a portion of the law at each meeting, ensuring that the ancient codes are not forgotten. When a case is brought forward, the accuser and the accused state their positions before the assembly. There are no professional lawyers. You must speak for yourself, and your reputation is your greatest asset. The primary goal of the thing is not punishment, but restoration. It seeks to restore the social balance that has been disrupted by a crime. The central mechanism for this is a complex system of fines. If you are found guilty of injuring or killing someone, you are ordered to pay a compensation to the victim or their family. This payment is known as the wergeld, the man price. The amount is not arbitrary. It depends entirely on the social status of the person who was harmed. The life of a powerful jarl is worth far more than the life of a simple farmer like yourself. The purpose of the wergeld is singular and vital: to prevent a blood feud. By accepting the payment, the wronged family agrees to consider the matter settled, foregoing their right to seek vengeance. Honor is a tangible force, and an insult to your honor is a serious crime. A man who is slandered or publicly shamed can demand a legal duel, a holmgang, to settle the matter with weapons. If you are accused of a crime and plead your innocence, your case can be bolstered by oath helpers. These are respected members of the community who will step forward and swear a sacred oath, not that they witnessed the event, but that they believe you to be an honorable person of good character, incapable of the crime of which you are accused. Their word carries immense weight. The judgment of the thing is the judgment of the entire community. If you are found guilty and ordered to pay a fine, the weight of your neighbor's stares, their collective will, pressures you to comply. If you refuse, the ultimate sanction can be applied. You can be declared an outlaw. This is more than just being banished. To be made an outlaw is to be stripped of all legal protection. You become a wolf's head outside the bounds of society. Your property is forfeit, and anyone can kill you without penalty. It is a social death, often followed quickly by a physical one. This entire system, from the counting of silver coins for a wergeld to the cold, hard feel of a dueling shield, is designed to contain the violence that always simmers just beneath the surface of your society. It is a fragile peace, maintained by community pressure and the constant, terrifying threat of the alternative, the blood feud, a cycle of revenge that could poison a family for generations and tear a community apart. We have now explored the internal threats of sickness and social strife. But there is another, more famous threat that defines the Viking Age: organized violence. The Norse world was governed by complex rules of honor and justice. As you relax, consider if this system feels more or less fair than our own. There's no right answer, just quiet contemplation. You have faced the invisible enemies. You have battled sickness with herbs and hopes, and you have navigated the complex worlds of gods and men. But there is another shadow that falls across your world, a shadow cast by the blade of an axe. This is the image that history will remember, the Viking warrior. Yet for you, a farmer, this is not a life you choose for glory. It is a duty, a danger, and another desperate roll of the dice in the great game of survival. The call, when it comes, is not a glorious trumpet blast. It is the deep, resonant sound of a horn, blown from the hall of your local jarl. Or perhaps it is simply a rider, a messenger arriving with a summons. It is the call to the lewanger, the levy. This is the system of conscription that binds you to your chieftain. Every district is obligated to provide a certain number of ships and armed men for his campaigns, whether to defend the local shores or to strike out across the sea. For you, this call is a source of deep anxiety. It means leaving your farm, your family, your entire world, often at a critical time. To be called away during the planting or the harvest is to risk the very survival of your household. But you have no choice. It is your obligation as a free man. You are not a professional warrior. You are a farmer with a weapon. You gather your meager gear. There is no horned helmet. That is a myth, a romantic fantasy of a later age. If you are lucky, you have a simple iron cap, a spangen helm, offering basic protection to your skull. More likely, you have no helmet at all. Your primary weapon is not a sword. Those are the costly weapons of chieftains and their personal retainers. Your weapon is the spear. It is long, simple, and relatively cheap to produce. Its iron tip effective at keeping an enemy at a distance. You also have your axe, perhaps the same one you use for felling trees. Its familiar weight a small comfort. Your most important piece of equipment is your shield. A round platter of wood, perhaps faced with leather, with an iron boss in the center to protect your hand. It feels heavy and awkward. This is your life. You march to the coast where the longships are gathered. The air smells of salt and fresh tar, used to waterproof the hulls. You are assigned a place not on the fighting platform, but on a simple wooden chest on the rowing deck, because you quickly learn the first truth of the Viking warrior. Most of his time is spent not fighting, but rowing. The longship is a magnificent vessel, a masterpiece of design, but its primary engine is the muscle and sweat of men like you. The coxswain shouts a rhythm, and you pull on the heavy wooden oar. The ship creaks and groans around you. You pull and pull and pull, for hours, for days. Your hands, accustomed to the plow handle, soon become raw and blistered. The chilling spray of the cold North Sea constantly washes over you, soaking your woolen clothes and chilling you to the bone. You see your own coastline, your home, slowly recede into a thin gray line on the horizon, and a profound sense of dread settles in your stomach. Many of your comrades, like you, cannot swim. To fall overboard in these cold, rough waters is certain death. The fear of drowning is as great as any fear of the enemy. When battle finally comes, it is not a series of heroic individual duels. It is the brutal, claustrophobic reality of the shield wall. You stand shoulder to shoulder with the men from your village, your shields locked together to form a solid, living barrier. The goal is to hold the line, to trust the man next to you, to push forward as one. It is a test of collective courage and discipline, not individual prowess. You jab with your spear over the top of the wall, trying to find a gap in the enemy's own line. The noise is a terrifying cacophony of shouts, screams, and the percussive thud of weapons against wood and iron. Should you survive and achieve victory, the spoils are divided. But they are not divided equally. The Jarl and his professional warriors, his herd, take the lion's share of the silver, the fine weapons, and the valuable captives. For you, there might be a small piece of silver, a new knife, or perhaps nothing at all. You are a conscript, an ore hauler, a small weary cog in the great machine of your chieftain's ambition. This ambition, the decision to launch a raid, is not born of a simple thirst for blood. It is a calculated act, a high-risk economic enterprise driven by the harsh realities of your world. For a young, landless man, a successful raid is one of the few ways to acquire the wealth needed to buy a farm, to attract a wife, and to establish himself in society. It is a brutal, high-stakes path to social mobility. For a chieftain, raiding is the engine of his power. It is how he acquires the resources to reward his followers and ensure their continued loyalty. The targets of these raids are chosen with care. The wealthy, isolated, and poorly defended monasteries of Britain, Ireland, and Francia are ideal. They are treasure houses of gold and silver, filled with precious chalices, jeweled book covers, and other sacred objects that can be melted down or sold. Silver is the ultimate prize. It is your currency, but not in the form of coins with faces on them. It is used by weight. A captured silver ingot or a stolen piece of church plate will be literally hacked into smaller pieces with an axe. This hack silver is weighed on small, portable scales to conduct transactions. It is a raw, tangible form of wealth. And then there is the other great prize, a commodity as valuable as any precious metal: human beings. The slave trade is a vast and brutal engine of the Viking economy. One captives taken in a raid, men, women, and children, are a form of walking wealth. They can be brought back to your own settlement to serve as thralls, or they can be sold in the great slave markets of Europe and the Middle East. The profits can be enormous. This is the dark truth that fuels the longships. This violent enterprise exists alongside a vast network of trade. You are not just raiders. You are perhaps the greatest traders of your age. The same longship that can carry a war band up a shallow river to a monastery can also carry furs, amber, and walrus ivory to be traded for silk, spices, and silver in the bustling markets of distant lands. You are merchants as well as marauders, your trade routes stretching from the shores of North America to the golden city of Constantinople. A chieftain's power is built on this flow of wealth. He operates within a gift economy. The silver and goods he acquires from raiding and trade are distributed among his warriors and allies in great feasts. A magnificent sword for his best warrior, a silver arm ring for a loyal supporter. These are not just presents. They are investments in loyalty, a public display of his success and generosity. A chieftain who is not generous, a jarl who leads a failed raid, will quickly find his followers abandoning him for a more successful leader. This entire system is seasonal, carefully timed to fit within the agricultural year. It is a high-stakes business, where the shallow draft of the longship is the key piece of technology, allowing you to bypass coastal defenses and strike with terrifying speed and surprise deep into the heart of other lands. The glint of gold on a stolen chalice, the cold, heavy feel of a silver ingot, and the thick, acrid smell of smoke from a burning settlement, these are the sensory inputs of your brutal but effective economic system. We have seen the raid from the ship and from the chieftain's hall. But there is another perspective. The perspective of the person on the shore, watching the dragon-proud ships appear on the horizon. To be on the losing side of a raid is to face the most terrifying outcome imaginable in your world: to become a thrall. It is the ultimate failure of survival, a fall from the status of a free human being to that of a piece of property. One moment you're a Carl, a free farmer in your own home. The next, your world is fire and screams. You are bound, your wrists chafing raw from the rough rope, and herded onto a ship with other captives. The faces around you are etched with a despair, so deep it seems to hollow out their eyes. You are surrounded by the sounds of a language you do not understand, the harsh, guttural speech of your captors. You have become a thrall. You are now legally an object. You have no rights, no honor, no name other than the one your owner gives you. You can be bought and sold like cattle. You can be beaten for any reason or no reason at all. Your owner can kill you, and it is no more a crime than breaking a tool. Your life becomes one of relentless, soul-crushing labor. You will be given the hardest, most unpleasant tasks. You will muck out the byre, haul stones for a new wall, and carry water until your back feels as though it will break. You will sleep on the cold, hard floor of the longhouse or in a drafty outbuilding. You will eat the scraps and leftovers from your master's table, if you are lucky. Your children, if you have any, will be born into this same state. They will be slaves from their first breath. For female thralls, there is the constant, looming threat of sexual exploitation by the men of the household, another right of ownership they can exercise at will. There is no escape. If you are taken to a foreign land, where would you run? How would you find your way home across a hostile sea? In some of the darkest corners of your new world, you might even face the horror of a ritual sacrifice. When a great chieftain dies, it is sometimes the practice to kill one of his thralls to serve him in the afterlife, a final, horrifying act of possession. This word, thrall, is so potent that it will survive for 1,000 years, entering the English language as a term for being in bondage, a captive to some power. This is the grim reality that underpins the wealth and glory of the Viking Age. It is the silent, suffering majority upon whose backs the great halls are built. The vast slave market in the Norse-run city of Dublin is one of the largest in all of Europe, a testament to the scale of this brutal trade. There is a small, flickering hope of being freed by a benevolent master, of becoming a Lesigny. But even then, you are not truly free. You will always carry the stigma of your past, your status forever lower than that of a free-born Carl. To be a thrall is to live in a world of constant fear, a world stripped of hope, a world where you are no longer a person, but a thing. For the free and the unfree, for the raider and the raided, life in this age is a fragile, fleeting thing. It is a common fantasy to imagine every Norseman dying a glorious death in battle, axe in hand, earning a seat in Odin's great hall. But this is a profound misunderstanding of both death and the afterlife. The truth is far more quiet and far more somber. The vast majority of your people will never die in battle. You will die from the same mundane, unglamorous enemies you have been fighting your whole life. You will die of a sickness that festers in your lungs, of a fever that burns away your strength. You will die of an infected wound from a farming accident. You will die of starvation during a long, hard winter when the harvest has failed. Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, is not a heaven for all. It is an exclusive warrior club, a paradise for the elite. Only the greatest champions, those who die exceptionally well in battle, are chosen by Odin's Valkyries to feast and fight there until the final battle of Ragnarok. It is a destination for jarls and their most accomplished retainers. It is not for you. For the common person, the farmer, the craftsman, The woman of the house, the afterlife, is a different place. Most believe that their spirit will journey to a realm called hell. It is not a place of fire and eternal punishment, like the hell of the Christians. It is a gloomy, neutral underworld, a gray and misty kingdom ruled by a goddess of the same name. It is a continuation, but a shadowy and diminished one. Others believe they might join their ancestors, dwelling within the holy mountain that overlooks their family lands, forever a part of their ancestral soil. Your final passage is marked not by a flaming ship, but by a simple grave. Ship burials are the extravagant funerals of kings and legendary chieftains, a display of wealth and power so immense as to be almost mythical. Your burial is a more humble affair. Your family will wash your body and wrap it in a simple woolen shroud. You will be placed in a grave dug into the cold earth. You will not go empty-handed. A few possessions will be buried with you, the tools you will need in the next life. For a man, perhaps his favorite knife and a fire-starting kit. For a woman, her spindle whorl and her weaving comb. These are the humble grave goods of a life of labor. Sometimes the body is cremated on a pyre, the smell of the funeral fire mingling with the damp scent of the soil. Over the grave, your family will build a cairn, a mound of stones, a simple and enduring monument to a life that was lived. In the end, the good death is not to fall in a shield wall on some foreign shore. The good death is to die in your own bed, in the smoky warmth of the longhouse you built, surrounded by the faces of your children and grandchildren. It is to die of old age, a rare and cherished achievement in a world where so many are taken young. It is to know that you have passed the farm on, that the struggle will continue, that your family will survive. This is the true victory. And so, your day, or perhaps your life, in the Viking Age comes to an end. Not with a glorious charge, but perhaps with a fever's chill, a failed harvest, or the quiet peace of old age earned through a lifetime of toil. Survival was the true victory. The struggle is over now. The longhouse is quiet. The fields are still. You can let go of the worry, the labor, and the cold. There is only peace now, and the gentle call of sleep. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you are still awake, we wish you a peaceful and restful night. The journey is almost at an end. We have walked through the smoke of the longhouse, felt the chill of the morning air, and heard the clang of the smith's hammer. We have traced the cycle of a life defined by toil and tenacity. The world of the Norse farmer, in all its harsh and quiet reality, has been laid bare. And now, as the mist of time begins to swirl and reclaim the past, we can rest. We can reflect, not on the violence of the myth, but on the subtle, enduring echoes these survivors left behind, whispers that still resonate in our world today. The most intimate and persistent of these echoes is in the very language we speak. The presence of the Norse people in the lands they settled was not just a fleeting, violent storm. It was a long and complex period of trade, of settlement, of two cultures living side by side. It was a time of neighbors. And neighbors, eventually, begin to share their words. Old Norse, the tongue of our farmer, seeped quietly into the foundations of Old English, and the result is a legacy we carry with us every single day. Listen to the words, you know. Simple, elemental words. When you look up, you see the sky. That word is not English in its origin. It is Norse. The skin on your hand, the leg you stand on, these two are gifts from the north. They are words of the body and the heavens, fundamental concepts shared between two peoples. Consider the home you live in. The very word window is a piece of Norse poetry coming from Vindalga, which literally means wind eye. A perfect, practical description of a hole in the wall meant to let in light and air. The word husband has its roots in the Old Norse husbandi, meaning house dweller, a term that speaks not of romance, but of the pragmatic reality of someone being bound to a household. Perhaps the most astonishing linguistic inheritance is found in the smallest, most essential words of all. The pronouns they, them, and there are all Norse. They pushed out the original Old English equivalents, a linguistic event that is incredibly rare. For a language to borrow something as fundamental as its third-person plural pronouns suggests a period of deep and prolonged integration. It suggests a world where Norse and Anglo-Saxon children played together, pointing and saying, "They are over there." A world where the two languages had to find a common, simplified ground to communicate effectively. This mingling of people is written all over the map of northern England, the area that was once known as the Danelaw. Travel there today, and you will find hundreds of place names ending in the suffix by, a Norse word for a farmstead or village. Grimsby, Whitby, Derby. These are the farms of Grimmer, and Vitty, and Jay. You will find names ending in Thorpe, meaning an outlying farm, and Thwaite, meaning a clearing in the forest. This is a quiet, cartographical testament to the Norse people not as raiders, but as pioneers, as farmers who cleared the land and built new homes. The very word we use for their system of justice law comes directly from the Old Norse word lag. The linguistic exchange touches the most common verbs, the very bones of our sentences. To get, to take, to give, to die. These core actions of life and possession have come to us from the language of the Norse. We see their heritage in surnames. A name like Henderson is simply son of Hendi. A name like Swain comes from Sveiten, the Norse word for a boy or a servant. Even the rhythm of our week is marked by their gods. Tuesday is Tyr's Day. Wednesday is Odin's Day, who is also known as Woden. Thursday is Thor's Day. And Friday is Frigg's Day. And of course, some of the most evocative words are direct reminders of their fiercest reputation. To go berserk comes from the berserker, the bare-shirt warrior who fought with a terrifying frenzy. To ransack a place is from ransaka, which simply meant to search a house. And the very word we use to describe their epic tales, a saga, is the Norse word for a story. To speak modern English is to constantly, unconsciously pay tribute to the lives of these Norse settlers. Their language is a ghost, a gentle presence that reminds us that their story was not only one of conflict, but of a slow, patient, and enduring integration into the fabric of a new land. The Norse left more than their words buried in the soil of other lands. They left the imprint of their clever hands and their pragmatic minds on the very tools they used to survive. We can now reflect on the technology they developed, not as tools of conquest, but as brilliant, elegant solutions born of necessity, tools designed to master a harsh environment and secure a fragile existence. The undisputed masterpiece of their technological world was the clinker-built longship. It was far more than a vessel of war. It was a marvel of naval engineering. The overlapping planks of its hull, fastened with iron rivets, created a structure that was both incredibly strong and remarkably flexible. This flexibility allowed it to ride with the waves of the brutal North Atlantic, rather than fighting against them. And its famously shallow draft, its ability to float in just a few feet of water, was a stroke of genius. It allowed them to navigate far upriver, deep into the heart of continents, and to land on any open beach without need of a deep harbor. On the right side of the stern, they mounted a large, specialized steering oar. They called this the steerboard, a term which has sailed down through 1,000 years of history to become the nautical term starboard. To guide these magnificent ships across the vast, featureless ocean, they needed more than just courage. They needed a way to find the sun, their primary guide, even on the gray, overcast days so common in the northern latitudes. The sagas speak of a mysterious tool, the solarstein, the sunstone. It is believed this may have been a type of natural crystal, which, when held up to the sky, could polarize the light and reveal the hidden position of the sun. It was a piece of near magical science, a quiet testament to their keen observation of the natural world. This same ingenuity was applied to the challenges of the home and the land. The warp-weighted loom, while an ancient design, was perfected by Norse women to produce the dense, warm, and weatherproof woolen cloth needed to survive the Scandinavian winters. The Viking axe, so often depicted as a brutish weapon, was in fact a perfectly balanced and versatile tool. Its specific shape, with its thin blade and gentle curve, made it ideal for the intricate woodworking needed to build a house or a ship, yet it could, if needed, serve as a formidable weapon. Their skill with iron was profound, from the difficult process of smelting raw bog iron to the sophisticated art of pattern welding. Even their simplest tools were perfectly adapted. The ard plow, which we saw earlier, was light and effective in the thin, rocky soils of the north. And when that soil was buried under deep snow, they did not surrender to confinement. They invented skis, long wooden runners that allowed them to glide over the surface of the snow, to hunt and travel and maintain contact between isolated farmsteads. On the frozen lakes and rivers, they strapped sharpened pieces of bone to their shoes, creating skates to traverse the ice with speed and ease. The very sturdiness of their log-built homes, with their interlocking corners, was a building technique perfectly suited to the great northern forests. Even their knowledge of preserving food, the salting, the drying, the smoking, the fermenting, was a technology in its own right, a quiet, domestic science that was perhaps the most vital of all. Each of these innovations speaks to a mind that was not brutal, but brilliant, not savage, but superbly adapted. They were masters of their environment because their technology was born directly from the challenges of their daily struggle. These tools and these words were created by a people with a distinct way of seeing the world. To truly understand how they endured, we must consider the psychological tools they carried, the philosophical anchors that gave them meaning and resilience in a life of constant hardship. Their mindset was built on three great pillars: fate, honor, and community. The Norse concept of fate, or word, is often misunderstood as a passive, fatalistic resignation. It was anything but. It was a profound acceptance of the things that could not be changed. The Norse believed that the ultimate length and course of a person's life was determined by the Norns, but how one walked that path was a matter of personal choice. Knowing that the end was already written did not encourage inaction. It encouraged bravery. If the outcome was already decided, why not face the challenges in your path with courage and resolve? It was a philosophy that freed a person to act honorably in the present moment, without fear of a future they could not control. Honor, or air, was a person's most valuable possession. It was an internal and external quality, a measure of your worth in the eyes of your community. Honor was defined by keeping your word, by facing hardship without complaint, by showing bravery, and by acting with generosity to both kin and strangers. A person's reputation, their oyster, was everything. This idea is captured perfectly in a verse from the Havamal, the great collection of Norse wisdom. Cattle die, kinsmen die, you yourself must also die. But the word of fame never dies, for him who gets a good one. Your physical body and your worldly possessions would vanish, but your good name, your honor, could achieve a kind of immortality. This overwhelming focus on reputation was only possible because of the third great pillar, the absolute centrality of kinship and community. In a world with no central government or police force, your family was your army, your court of law, and your only safety net. Loyalty to your kin was the highest virtue. The community, bound together by these kinship ties, was the larger organism within which every individual lived. Hospitality was not merely a kindness. It was a sacred duty, a practical way of weaving the web of alliances and mutual obligations needed to survive. One, the serious binding handshake that sealed an oath, the warm welcoming light of a longhouse, seen by a weary traveler, the shared determined purpose of a family bringing in the harvest. Before a storm, these were the physical manifestations of a mindset that knew with absolute certainty that survival was not an individual struggle. It was a collective one. We began our journey by stripping away the myth of the Viking warrior. Now, in these final, quiet moments, we can look back and understand why that myth continues to hold such a powerful grip on our imagination. Having journeyed through the reality of their lives, we can see the truth from which the legends grew. The romanticized image of the horned helmeted barbarian was largely an invention of the 19th century, a product of a fascination with the wild and distant past. Modern archaeology and scholarship have replaced this caricature with a picture that is infinitely more complex and far more profound. Our enduring fascination may stem from a sense of connection to a more elemental world, a world where the boundary between humanity and nature was thin and permeable. The Norse people represent a spirit of incredible daring, a willingness to push the boundaries of their known world, to set out across a terrifying unknown ocean, not knowing if they would find land or simply sail off the edge of the world. 2. But their greatest explorations were not across the sea, but into the depths of human endurance. The true story is not found in the cartoon, but in the quiet dignity of a museum artifact. A simple leather shoe, worn thin from years of walking on a packed earth floor. A single carved bone comb, its teeth smoothed by use. A handful of carbonized grain from the bottom of a storage pit. These are the relics of the real Viking Age, the reality of the farmer, the weaver, the blacksmith, and the mother is the silent, unshakable foundation upon which everything else was built. Without the surplus food they grew, without the woolen sails they wove, without the iron rivets they forged, there would have been no longships, no raids, no sagas. Understanding their daily struggle against cold, hunger, and sickness makes their actual achievements all the more remarkable. That a people who lived such a precarious existence could also create such beautiful art, compose such profound poetry, establish such a robust system of law, and build the ships that would carry them to the shores of America 500 years before. Columbus is a testament to their extraordinary spirit. Their legacy is not just one of violence, but of settlement, of adaptation, of law, and of language. They were not one-dimensional warriors. 3. They were a complex and capable people of farmers and poets, merchants and explorers. The truest Viking saga is not about the few who became famous for raiding, but about the millions who are forgotten, the ones who simply survived. The quiet, relentless endurance of the common person is the most heroic story of all. The story of the Viking is not truly about the axe, but about the hand that held it, a hand that was more often chapped from the plow than stained by battle. It is a story of survival. And now, your own journey for tonight is done. The past fades back into the mist. There is nothing left to do but rest. Let the silence comfort you, and allow yourself to drift into a deep and peaceful sleep.